year 2027, where the numbers themselves have a mysterious feeling about them. Will this be just another year, or is there a deeper significance to this time? Will something major happen that reshapes the human collective? There are some unusual indicators that something strange may possibly be brewing around this time, especially for the institutions and organizations we have long held as permanent fixtures in our society. From politics to mass media to our economic system, it is becoming increasingly apparent that some sort of a major shift is underway. One that may radically change the way in which we operate. One that no longer requires us to be so enmeshed with these institutions, many of which never cared about us in the first place. But why is this change happening? Why is it that all of these institutions seem to be in decline and crumbling at the same time? And more importantly, what comes next? It's simple. Right now, there's a change in the background frequency, the programming of Earth's collective consciousness itself. And like a clock, when the year strikes 2027, a new background frequency will be in place. Know the mechanism behind this change in the program, and you'll know what's to come and be able to prepare yourself for it. Ignore it, and well, enjoy riding blind into a remarkable future. Welcome back to the Octave Leap channel, where we explore the bigger picture of what is going on right now based on a key mechanism in the human design system and how you can use this time to orient yourself positively and find total coherence in alignment no matter what happens. So in today's video, we're going to explore something that we're probably all feeling right now, but can't always articulate with the biggest shift going on in the planet. And being able to articulate and identify what's going on is extremely important into making positive change. But did you know that this shift that is happening right now may not just have been foreseen, but there might be a very precise mechanism that can help us understand the mechanics behind what's happening? So this mechanism may also be just hidden in plain sight, such as in megalithic ancient structures that were used at one point to measure the great changes in collective consciousness. So the great changes that dictate when empires rise and fall, and the themes that would be most prevalent to the human collective consciousness. Imagine what knowing this could do for you. You'd never be left behind, bought into an idea well past its expiry date. Instead, you'd have the unique ability to reap the benefits from living at the cutting edge of consciousness, letting go of the past, and basically staying attuned to what's coming in. So buckle up. But first, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and get ready for a mind-expanding world into astrology and human design. Not only that, but stay tuned to the end because I have a special gift that will help you align better during these times. Over the centuries, millennia, and millions of years of history, there have been forces much greater than the human being that dictates how things will evolve. It's like the planet's own intelligence intermingles with our human collective unconscious. No matter how hard we try, though, nature will always win. But there are patterns in nature, and perhaps these patterns align with this background frequency. And maybe that changes the way that things develop, and that we can't say our developments are random. Perhaps there is a way to know and decode just how nature works and how it will evolve. According to some esoteric scholars, all major religions of the world are based on a concept called astrotheology. Astrotheology says that the myths and archetypes of gods and goddesses are actually metaphors for the movement of celestial bodies in the sky. The aspects and angles that these celestial bodies form basically influence human consciousness and shape the beliefs and evolutionary patterns for each and every age and epoch of our civilization. For instance, the equal arm cross is actually much older than Christianity. It actually has nothing to do with Jesus' death on the cross. In fact, it is an ancient compass. Each arm of the cross points to a cardinal direction, this being the cardinal direction of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Now, each cardinal direction also marks a specific theme related to the transits of planets across fixed astrological locations, such as the start of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. According to astrotheology, these are symbols for the mechanics of how reality works. It becomes an astrolabe that symbolizes the currents of consciousness based on which planets cross these fixed points at a given time. But there's actually a much larger cycle that occurs, one that is not measured in months or seasons of the year, but it's actually measured in millennia, nearly 26 millennia to be specific. This is said to be a year in the life of the Earth, the Great Year, the Platonic Year. And understanding how to interpret this year can give you a clear advantage in knowing where the world has been and also where it's heading. Because the energy of the collective is measurable and repeatable. But to understand this process, we must understand how it relates to the longest and most mysterious cycle we have measured in the Earth's 3 motions. So Earth moves in 3 ways. The longest in duration is this thing called the wobble of the Earth, and is 25,625 years for one cycle. This is responsible for the migration of the poles of the Earth over time, and esotericists believe it is also linked to the great harvest cycles and fruition cycles of human consciousness. So this rotation is extremely important for the evolution of the planet. Now, it's said that this motion is what caused past cataclysmic events such as the Great Flood of the Younger Dryas. To astrotheologists, this wobble is also the key to understanding consciousness itself. It is measured by the backdrop of stars behind where the sun rises on the spring equinox. This is called the precession of the equinox. And this measurement was given immense importance to certain cultures because of the profound implications it has for understanding the big picture at a given point in time. This is where astronomy and astrology converge. Evolutionary astrologers became fascinated with where the sun rises on the spring equinox because they believed that the sign that is behind where the sun rises tells us about the ruling consciousness at a given time. And they insist that these measurements correlate with the development of civilization itself and planetary themes. For instance, the age of Gemini, which was approximately 6,500 before the Common Era to 4,300 BCE, correlated with the development of the written word, indicative of Gemini's archetype of communication. The age of Taurus, which approximately ran from 4,300 BCE to 2,200 BCE, was when agriculture and the domestication of animals increased in the world, exalting Taurus's archetype of fertility, abundance, and resources. The age of Aries, approximately 2,200 BCE to 0 AD, was marked by massive wars and conquest of biblical proportions, and that's where the expression came from. And this exalts Aries' archetype of conquest and domination. Following that was the age of Pisces, which approximately lasts from 0 AD to 2200 AD. And this era is marked by the rise of organized religion and secrets, matching Pisces' deeply spiritual yet secretive nature. Finally, the coming age of Aquarius begins in just a couple centuries. However, we are already witnessing the profound reimagining of the world through the lens of technology, which is a truly Aquarian trait. So astrologers believe that the precession of the equinoxes is a way of measuring and predicting the background frequency of the human collective on Earth at a given time. Knowing this information is immensely helpful to those who want to position themselves in alignment with where things are actually heading up there. But there's one problem here with this model, and that's the arc of a single sign is really a long time, and these themes are quite vague, so we're not getting very precise information. That's why we might want to ask, is there a more precise way to measure changes on a smaller time frame that are much less vague and much more specific? A way that could give more detailed information than just the particular archetype of a zodiac sign. Well, in 1987, this all changed, and it couldn't have come at a better time because apparently we're meant to be bracing ourselves for an immense change in society that's occurring in merely 40 years from when this message was delivered. So I've covered this in great detail before, but basically in 1987, a Canadian man by the name of Alan Krakauer, later Ra Uruhu, had a mystical encounter with a mysterious voice that seemed to spill the secrets on how not just the universe worked, but humans work as well, and a very important revelation for the year 2027. So this Alan Krakauer Ra-Uruhu guy, he went from being a very logical, skeptical former marketing executive to basically being a full-blown wisdom keeper of a new esoteric system in a very short period of time. And it was not the kind of experience that he would have imagined or even wanted. Several days of this experience involved the complex transmission of his download of the human design system. And several days of this were shocking revelations on the mechanics of how reality itself works. One of the most fascinating parts of what was learned about during this time was that of the Great Year. Ra was shown a precise clockwork-like mechanism for decoding each interval on the Great Wheel of Time. A massive refinement of what astrologers had realized through the precession of the equinoxes. Instead of the relatively vague resolution of 2,200-year periods, we now get a very precise measurement for a much smaller timescale. Not only that, but what Ra was shown was that for each placement of the sun along this mechanism, there were also 7 other points activated, much like the 8-armed cross of Gnosticism. So was there something to this Gnostic cross that Ra had tapped into during his time with the voice? Is there a correlation in the symbolism behind both of these mechanisms? So this mechanism goes very deep and provides precise information regarding the background frequency at play for any point in history. On this dial, there are 8 fixed points called locks, which define the immutable themes that will be at play at a given time. As the sun regresses along the ecliptic in the precession of the equinoxes, it activates 8 moving points called keys that give a specific flavor to each theme at a particular time. In essence, the keys provide the incoming energy, and the locks describe what happens when each key is in place. Our current key started in the year 1615, and it goes until, yep, you guessed it, 2027. On February 15th, 2027, the 8-point configuration changes from 2 crosses, the crosses of planning and the cross of the Maya, into the cross of the sleeping phoenix and the cross of penetration. Now this might sound like a lot of jargon, but if you know how to interpret this information, you'll understand that everything that has happened over the last 400 years followed a specific plan, to a T. And that program is changing. When it does, we'd better be ready. Because the current era that is coming to a close was defined by humans coming together in groups, tribes, and communities. It was a time when we saw human beings supported or homogenized into larger organizations, such as governments, religions, scientific bodies, and corporations. But as this era comes to an end, so will these institutions. They will no longer be able to support us. According to this change in background frequency, there is no fixing that which is broken in society. And what it gives rise to is the polar opposite energy from the outgoing era. The incoming is going to be much different. The age of the sleeping phoenix is a time of radical individuality, and we're seeing this beginning to emerge today with independent journalists holding more clout than mass media, the fall of gurus, spiritual and otherwise, and even religion on its decline, as the rise of the self-informed spirituality begins to take hold. It also means that the family unit is breaking down as we redefine what relationships actually mean. This interpretation goes a lot deeper, and it will receive an entire video to itself to understand this coming change in greater detail, so I will be making a lot more on this. But the major takeaway here is this: relying on things to run a certain way in order for us to get through our day, such as we trust that there will be electricity on in the house, heating, that basically auto manufacturers will develop transportation for us to travel, and that the grocery stores are going to have food when we go there. But none of these systems existed 400 years ago, let alone 150 years ago. They are merely features of a particular frequency that we have begun to take for granted. And as we can see that there are signs that the very fabric of our society is being challenged at the times, this causes us to reevaluate our values and orientation towards self-sufficiency. So what happened was at a particular point in time, earlier on in this cycle, these things were rightful and they benefited us massively. But as we can see now at the end of the cycle with the incoming sleeping phoenix, that the very fabric of our society is being massively challenged. And And this is causing us to reevaluate our values and our orientation towards something like self-sufficiency, unless we end up in an undesirable dystopia. I mean, just look at inflation, homelessness, and the degradation of the quality of life. And basically, the main takeaway here is know yourself and individuate into that knowledge of yourself, because you have to realize with where we're heading, there are no outside saviors or institutions that can help us with what's to come. This really has to come from our own internal knowing. So it's important that we really know ourselves in the process. And that's why I've created the 3-day free journey with Trifecta, where you can actually see, starting with the collective wound. So when you understand the collective wound, you understand the imprint of the collective that makes you take something for granted that essentially isn't really true. But when you remove that lens, you're able to see the whole world more clearly. So go ahead, the link to that is in the description below. Also, I've got a workshop coming up on this great cycle where I'm going to be talking about it in more detail and also providing specific information for how people can align themselves during this time. And so the workshop details are below. It's a pay what you want workshop, and it'll be happening near the end of August. Once it's done, so be sure to register if you see this. But it's pay what you want because I want this to be as accessible as possible for people, because I really feel like this information right now at this time in history is super important for us. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you make use of the gifts that I'm providing to really help with this. And I'm going to be speaking a lot more about this on this channel because we are at a key moment of history, and there is an extremely amazing opportunity here if we're willing to identify what that is and seize it for ourselves and use it as our path of service as well. Okay, take care.